just last week, I was walking through some dodgy back alleys in the middle of the night, minding my own business, when suddenly 3 masked men appeared out of nowhere and gave chase. I tried to run, tried to hide, to no avail. I was cornered and caught, my life in the hands of these strangers whom I've never met before. And at that point, gun to my head, their leader said, "You only have one option here." "Sure, anything, I'll do anything, I swear," I said in a fit of desperation. "You're a professor, right? Well, it's time for you to teach. If you want your worthless life spared, you need to teach my boys and me how to beat our video game addiction." So here's what I told them. A story that ultimately saved my life and might one day save yours as well. So according to a 2022 Discover article, video game addiction is on the rise nowadays, more so than like ever before. And sure, while some explanations for this are quite obvious when you think about it, others are significantly more subtle. As Andrew Fishman, a Chicago-based therapist, said, every major game company now hires behavioral psychologists to make sure that their games are as engaging as possible and use as many psychological tricks to keep people playing as much as possible. And when you really think about it, when you kind of take this whole narrative in, video game addiction is a strange beast that doesn't really make all that much sense. After all, as gamers, we're putting in hours, weeks, months, sometimes even bloody years for like fake points, currencies, and achievements. Yet when it comes to working on our real life goals, professional, personal, whatever, suddenly we're overwhelmed like there's no tomorrow. So what the fuck is up with that? And note that this happens even though, and this is super important, even though we know that we're going to feel good once we've achieved something in real life, more so than when we achieve something in the video game. We are aware of our own behavioral biases, yet we continue to drill ourselves in the butt. We still prefer the fake achievement over the real one. In my case, as some of you might know, I'm a researcher at Cambridge University, and whenever I would like publish a paper, whenever I would give like a good lecture, I would feel good about myself, obviously. I would get a little bit tiddly. Yet a few years ago, that didn't stop me from dreading every second of my job. Whenever I was in the office or the classroom, I remember that I would literally count the seconds down to be able to go back home and continue my Pokemon shiny hunting or my mount collection in World of Warcraft. At some point, it became so fucking bad that my cosmetics in video games became more important to me, more important to my brain than my fucking career progression. Everything else be damned. Which is like fucking ludicrous, mate, when you think about it. Anyway, one night I realized that enough's enough and pulled the plug, both figuratively and literally. I am a bit of a drama queen, after all. That night I quit everything cold turkey. World of Warcraft, Pokemon, gone. And that right there was the biggest mistake of my life. In a recent study at the Mayo Clinic College of Medicine, Dr. J. Taylor Hayes found that when it comes to smoking, quitting cold turkey on your addiction seldom works. I mean, basically never. With research over the past 25 years showing that out of 100 people trying to quit smoking cold turkey, only about 3 to 5% of them managed to do so for a period of over 6 months. And obviously, this video is not about smoking or any other form of substance abuse. However, the conclusions of this study kind of matched the experiences I had and a lot of my students have with video game addiction to a fucking tea. You see, when I made that fateful decision to like quit video games cold turkey, you know, kind of tossing away everything, my laptops, consoles, iPhones, blah, 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 blah. Superficially, yes, I was doing the right thing because I wasn't gaming anymore. But deep down, I knew that this wouldn't really last because there was one thing that I didn't throw out that day, myself. Or rather, that, you know, dark part of myself which perpetually whispered in my ear about kinda the futility of it all. The demon inside me reminding me that everything that I'm trying to do right now is but temporary and that one day my addiction is going to get the better of me. One day when I least expect it, I am going to relapse. And when they did. You see, one night after a particularly bad day at work involving a bowling ball and the wrong type of social gathering, a story for another time, the pull was just too strong to resist. I needed something to take the edge off, to take my mind off of what happened, and there she was, beckoning to me. 5 minutes, she whispered in my ear. You've earned it. You more than deserve it. Cold turkey set me up for failure because the underlying disease was never actually addressed. So, if that doesn't work, what does? Nowadays, when it comes to like addiction, I actually don't think video games themselves are the problem at all. The problem is reality. Relative to video games, relative to how video games make us feel, reality is kinda mid. There are no flashy achievement screens, no obvious leveling up, no character progression. Also, depending on the circumstances of like your birth, you may never actually progress past the first stage. Inequality, am I right? So yeah, yikes. But really, when you like take a thorough look and ask yourself why it's so difficult to stop yourself from logging into your favorite video game, the biggest problem, more so than anything else, at least what I've discovered, is that video games care for you when reality doesn't. Sometimes you can pour days, months, years into a project only for it to fail, only for it to be rejected and not amount to anything. Sometimes you can prepare for like interviews day in and day out and you're still not going to be accepted. They're still going to go for someone else. You can study and study and study and study and study for an exam only for your professor to use it as a snot napkin later. Reality doesn't care. In video games, however, if you put in the time, you will level up. If you farm enough, you will get that rare drop, that shiny Pokemon, that flashy mount, the horse turd in that one video game. But here's the problem though. Video games care a little too much. Fine, you wanna know my secret? I never stopped. Instead, one cold night in November, I kinda had this mini epiphany of sorts. At 5 a.m. in the morning, after a particularly degenerate bout of gaming, I realized that nothing that I was doing in the game itself actually gave me pleasure anymore. It all felt kinda empty, which was weird because in the past I did have so much fun gaming. I would sell like my left testicle and left butt cheek for a few hours of extra WoW time. And that's when it struck me. Our minds are like these cravenous little bitches that day in and day out demand oops, demand novelty from us. They want us to provide them with constant streams of dopamine. So just gaming over and over and over again to exhaustion didn't really bring any much joy anymore. I was just this kind of drug addict that felt bad whilst gaming, but I preferred that because I felt even worse while not gaming. But you see, here's a little secret. Whenever I would combine gaming with other more productive activities, for example, working on a project for work and then gaming, or making sure that I stay on top of my studies and then game. You see, this combination of good and bad kind of made the bad feel better. What the fuck am I saying? Suddenly, the dopamine of gaming once again hit me like a bear-sized truck. I feel like I've been all over the place with this video, but I gotta say, this is quite the sensitive subject for me, so I always get a bit scatterbrained when I talk about it, just because it's a very vulnerable subject. However, I hope that the main message that I try to convey is clear. Quitting cold turkey doesn't work because it sets us up for failure. The second we kind of relapse even a little bit is the second we go on a complete downward spiral. So instead, what you have to do is to kind of take advantage of your addiction, realize it's there, but make use of it, kind of use it as a weapon. Because gaming feels good, but gaming after a productive day of work and studying feels amazing. And it's this balance that allowed me to achieve the things I've achieved in these past few years. As for your motherfuckers,